Howdy guys, welcome to BRG Photography. My name is Ben and this is the first video of my brand new channel. In this video we are going to be doing a full portrait retouch using Affinity Photo. I'm going to be showing you kind of my workflow and the tools and techniques I use when I'm editing and retouching my photos. Now I will say that these videos are going to be geared more toward people who are a little bit already familiar with Affinity Photo, especially things like frequency separation, dodging and burning, clone stamping. That way, instead of spending time explaining how to do these things, I can explain the reasons why we're doing it, show different methods, different techniques that can be used with these really powerful tools. So with that said, this is going to be a two-part video. This is part one, and why don't we just go ahead and jump right in. So this is the image that we're working with today. This is a photo I took about a year ago of a friend of mine back in Osaka. And let's go ahead and begin. So first things I like to do is duplicate my background layer. This way I just always have the background layer that I can go back to see how far I've come, if I've gone too far, etc. Things like that. Alrighty, so first was this background layer, this new background layer selected. I am going to see if there's anything just immediately I want to get rid of and fix. That can be done really simple using the in-painting brush. So for example, up here there's some green line or something. I don't know what that is, but let's just go ahead and use the in-painting brush and just kind of get rid of that. Maybe this little corner right here, get rid of that. On her shirt there's a strand, kind of distracting. I'll just go ahead and get rid of that. And even though I know this hole is kind of part of the design of the t-shirt, I'm just going to go ahead and in painting brush that out. I can see there's cat scratches on her arm, and I will get to those, but I'll get to those in a later step. To be honest, this metal bar here kind of bothers me. And I could erase it, but I don't want to do it right now because I know it will take a bit of time to make it look right at least. So let's just leave that here for now. Alrighty. So first thing I like to do is to go into frequency separation. This is a very popular technique amongst retouchers, and I really like the way you can do it in Affinity Photo because it's just super quick and simple. So when I'm doing frequency separation, what I'm looking for is I want to figure out what things do I want to edit on the lower layer, which is here on the right side, and protect on the left side. So, for example, I think this is too high. If I make any big drastic edits here, it's just going to be it's going to look way too smooth. But if I go too far using the slider, then obviously this is like an extreme where if I can't even make any changes because there's just no detail to make changes to. So I can't really give you a number because it's going to be different for each image because of the size, how close the face is to or how big it is in the frame, the resolution of their camera, the image size, etc. But what I'm looking for is something where I can see some of these little splotches and blemishes that I want to adjust without it affecting all the detail, like her pores and these little creases in her skin and stuff. And you can just kind of play around with it and figure out, okay, because unfortunately once you've kind of done it, you can't really go back. You can't go back and adjust it. But let's try 8. We'll just do something around 8. 7.7 is good enough, I think. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And it's going to create 2 new layers for me, a low frequency layer and a high frequency layer. What I like to do is I'm going to select a low frequency layer, create a new pixel layer on top of that, select the high frequency layer, same thing there. Grab all 4 of those, group them together, and I'm going to make this my FS layer because frequency separation is a pain in the butt to say every time. Alrighty, so now that I have this, let's go to work. So when I'm working on the low frequency layer, which is what I like to do first, is I like working on it by turning off the high frequency layer. That way I'm only seeing the things that I can adjust. Because there's lots of detail on the high frequency layer, if you work on the low frequency layer with the high frequency layer on, sometimes you might see things that you can't fix because they're on the high frequency layer. For me, it's just easier to turn that off. Then I know everything I see, I have an effect on. Okay, and the reason why I don't also paint directly onto the low frequency layer is by having a pixel layer, it allows me to adjust the opacity later. So if I've gone too far, I can bring that up. I can bring that back a little bit. I guess you could do it to an extent by just lowering the low frequency layer because I have the background layer below it, but I just like to keep it all together. So let's go ahead and go to work. So the first things I want to address is some of the inconsistencies in the skin tone, color, and just, I guess, like depth, for example. Like here, I'm right off the bat, this forehead. There's this bump on this forehead here, which looks like a bump or just something. Looks a bit, not bad, but looks, I want to fix it. I'm going to do that by doing my healing brush. Make sure I am set to current layer and below. And I'm just going to go ahead and I like to do around 80% opacity, 0 hardness. That way I'm not completely obliterating it in one go, maybe even 70%. And I'm just going to sample from, say, here and just kind of paint over that and maybe just try to even out this here. Okay. And maybe take this white spot and kind of blend it better. So one reason I like using the healing brush is because the healing brush, as opposed to the clone stamp tool, is trying to blend the two, the source and the target, I guess, together. And so it's a great way to kind of blend things. If we turn off and on, you can kind of see that's what we've done. And if we turn back the high frequency layer on, we can kind of see we just fixed that little bump in her forehead. But all of the high detail is still protected. All the pores and things on the skin texture on her forehead is all there, unharmed. So that's what we are going to be doing with the low frequency layer. So for example, there's this patch of dark skin down here that I want to kind of even out, or this is actually kind of light here and then kind of dark here. So I'm just going to use the low healing brush still and just kind of even that patch out. And you can kind of see what we've done here. Oops. So after, before, after. Alrighty. Now, recently I feel like that frequency separation has become kind of, or is falling out of favor, and a lot of retouchers are using dodging and burning. And I think that's a great technique, and I do use it in conjunction with frequency separation. So I think there's times and place for both. For things like this, it's just really fast to come down here and just, get rid of little things like this, little patches of discoloration, unevenness in the skin. And again, the reason why it's nice when you're working on a separate layer is that, for example, if I feel I went too far, I can bring it back, right? I can bring it back to maybe make it look a bit more natural at the end. So I actually don't mind going a bit overboard at this step because I know that I can bring it back with a slider. I can use the eraser to bring detail back, things like that. All right, here's one kind of thing that I like about using low frequency with the healing brush is this harsh kind of line between a highlight and shadow. By using the healing brush in the low frequency layer, I can basically make this a nicer blend. You can see, and let's see what we did here. You can see it's just not as harsh. I've kind of eliminated that harsh highlight on her cheek, but all of the detail in her skin is still there. So that is one reason why I really like using the healing brush on the, nope, don't do that. Make sure we are painting on the right layer. The healing brush on the low frequency layer. Sometimes I'll drop my opacity down to 50 or 60. That way I'm not completely getting rid of it. Like I don't want to completely erase things like, some of the ununiformity in her skin, because nobody has perfectly uniform skin, and we're not trying to do a beauty, high-end fashion retouch where the skin is completely flawless. I want to make sure I try to retain as much of the character in her face and her skin, but just making her look better. Just making her look, no, sorry, that's the wrong word, more beautiful than she already looks right now. Just making her look the best that she can look in a photo. And another thing that's also to be aware of, this is a bit related but unrelated, is that when you're looking at a photo, we're looking at a still image in time. We're looking at a frozen moment in time. And so, for example, all these little like freckles or discoloration in her skin, or these like blemishes, pimples, or whatever, these are things that we would not normally notice if we were talking to her, if she was my friend. Like, even she's a friend of mine, I couldn't even tell you where she had freckles if you asked me to remember. But when I'm looking at an image, I can see these immediately. And so by getting rid of them, we're actually preserving the image that we have of this person in our head. So that's why I think you can get away with doing a bit more retouching with these photos, because it's not altering the image of what she looks like, if that makes any sense. So let's just go ahead and go through this really quick. Here's this other kind of spotch of unevenness, and maybe here some blemishes on the cheek, and all I'm doing is just a healing brush, maybe here under the eyes. Let's just lighten this a little. Like, I don't want to get rid of it completely, but let's just try to blend in these tonal differences so it's not, just so it looks a bit smoother. Here's a little white patch down here. We can kind of even that out. Obviously there's some like blemishes on her chin. We'll go ahead and get that. And let's see here. Okay, so yeah, basically I'm just doing a little bit of things like this, little changes. I don't want to go too crazy, but if I do, not a problem. I can just take that opacity slider, drag it back, and get it back to something that I think looks good and natural. All right, so let me see here. I think this is pretty good. I could spend a lot more time doing this and fixing a lot of things, but I don't want to for this first video. I want to just kind of go kind of quick, and maybe as I make more videos, I can spend more time on particular techniques and the such. But for now, I'm just trying to even out. I think also why I like having the high frequency layer off is it just makes it easier for me to see tonal indifferences and changes when it's kind of blurry, because I'm not distracted by the detail. But that's just me. You guys can use whatever works best for you guys. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and just see what we have done so far. That's the high frequency layer back on. Now you can look at this and you almost can't even tell I did anything. It's like, wow, well, did you even do anything? Yeah, when I turn off the low frequency layer, you can see all the changes that we have made. If we look at it, get that out of the way. If we look at it, at full size, we can kind of see, like, I feel they're kind of subtle. Like, it's just kind of smoothing out her skin without making her look like a doll, or removing all skin texture, or at worst making her look like she has some kind of, Facetune filter on or something. Okay, and like I said, maybe if I go, okay, you know what, it's a little too much, let's just knock it back a bit, let's take it to 85%. That way we still get a little bit of that inconsistency in her face, but she still looks great. Fantastic. Okie dokie. Let's see. Okay, I mean, that's all right. I mean, I could, depending on how much I want to do it. Let's bring this back, actually. 100. There's still a little bit of like inconsistency here in the cheek. I could just say, okay, let's just smooth that out completely. But I don't want to spend too much time on it for this video. Okay, so that's that. Alrighty. Let's move on to, Almost forgot. One thing I think a lot of people forget is that when you're doing frequency separation, you are not limited to just doing the face. You got to look at other parts of the body. So if I turn off my high frequency layer, I can see all these scars and stuff here from her cat scratches. Now these, I will bump up my opacity to 100% because these I think can just be gone all the way. It's just distracting. There's nothing, and these are things that are not permanent. When you're deciding what to delete and what not to delete or change, I usually ask myself, is this a permanent feature on this person? For example, I wouldn't delete this mole or freckle here under her eye because that's her, like that's part of her. Even this one here, maybe that one, that's part of her character. But these cat scratches, they're not. They are temporary, and the next time I see her, she probably won't have them. So I think it's okay to just completely annihilate them in frequency separation. Okay. And let's see, for example, this under the neck, it's normal, but I want to just kind of reduce it. So I'm going to lower my opacity to 50%, just sample from around the area and just kind of go over that, just so it's not so pronounced. This arm looks okay. Maybe this collarbone, there's a little bit of inconsistency there. Okay. Yeah, the rest looks good to me. Cool beans. Alrighty. High frequency layer on. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and work on the layer I created above the high frequency. This one is to fix some of these details in the high frequency layer. If we want to take a look at all the stuff I did on the low frequency layer, I can hit Option and select my layer, and you will see those are all the changes I made underneath. So that's pretty cool. Okay. Onto the high frequency layer. Now this time, I like to just use the in-painting brush. I find that the in-painting brush works really good for getting these little small things, and it doesn't take too much time, and it is really fast and effective. So with my opacity to 100, hardness, let's just keep it around 50-60%, and I'm just gonna do like that, and perfect. That's gonna get rid of that. I think the in-painting brush in Affinity Photo does a really great job of, what do you call it? I forget what it's called. Something aware. Content aware. I think it's really good at doing that. For example, this hair. I'm just going to slowly, piece by piece, get rid of that. I find that it works a bit better if you just do a little bit at a time as opposed to trying to do the whole hair at once. Yeah. Oops. And that little pimple bump there. And let's see how it does here. Now, this is where it does get a bit harder because I could try to, let's just see what happens if I run it across this. It didn't do too bad, but I can kind of see where it did that. So we might have to kind of go little by little. And if it's a bit too difficult, like something like this, clone stamp is better. Now, obviously, I can see there's some edits that have been made, but when we are looking at it like that, well, no, actually, you know what? I can still see that there is something there. So I think I'm just going to ignore that hair for now. And let's just try one more with the stamp tool. So using clone stamp, current layer, and below selected. And we are just going to put the hardness pretty high, opacity all the way up, flow all the way up. And we will just do like this, stamp right above it and do like that. That is going to, nope. Yeah, maybe it's down here. There we go. Yeah, and this is, this is really just nitpicky stuff here. I think you can get away with not having to do this at all, and no one's gonna really care or pay attention, hopefully. But this is just a few different techniques to kind of, and again, it's not perfect. If you were doing this for an image that was going to be blown up on a billboard, yeah, you could spend a lot of time making sure every little hair is perfect. But I know that this is going to go on Instagram, and at Instagram size, you are not going to see that. So I'm not going to pay too much attention to that. Okay, so let's now go down to the face. What do we want to get rid of on the face? Again, what are the things that we feel are not permanent? Like this blemish here. This is not something that I think that she always has. Maybe these little bumps here. This little, I guess, like looks like mascara rubbed off on her face. So these little black dots. Like I just said, you're not going to see this much detail on Instagram, but I do like to edit high res all the time, because there are times when she might say, "Oh, I really love this photo. Can you send me the full high res image because I want to get it blown up, or I want to print it out in a book?" And then you might see that detail. So I think it's worth spending the time just doing things you think you might not see, because you never know. You don't want it to come back, months later and have to retouch all the fine detail. This pore here is really deep. I'm just going to go ahead and just get rid of that. So just backing up a little bit, what are the things that distract me the most about this image? Maybe, like, again, a few more like deep pores that I could get rid of there. Maybe that one. Some of the discoloration. I'm trying to figure out which ones are like freckles and which ones are just kind of like, human skin as you just kind of get older and stuff. And not that she's old. I think she was 29 at this time of this photo. But just things that are distracting, like this, especially the chin area. Maybe that I might keep. That's a freckle maybe. This little bit here. And yeah, you could spend a lot more time doing it really precise with the clone stamp tool or dodging and burning it out. But I feel like for this kind of image, using the healing brush, the inpainting brush, is just fast and efficient and just works really, really well. Okay, maybe we'll get rid of that. I can see there's some dark discoloration here, so let's go back to our low frequency layer. And you can see all the adjustments I made on the high frequency layer. So that's why you got to be careful about trying to change something after you've adjusted it on the high frequency layer, because it might not match later. So let me just go turn that off, make it easy. I'm going to just go ahead and try to get that color, this discoloration out. So one thing you can do is use a normal paintbrush. Use paint. I'm going to do a brush that I had made, 100% opacity, 2% flow, 0% hardness. And I'm going to just grab a color by holding down the option and pressing the pin to the tab or the mouse click down. Grab a color that I kind of like nearby, and you can see the selected color there. And I'm just going to paint that color there. And if we can see, yeah, it just kind of got rid of that. It just got rid of them. And do a little more here. And by doing a low flow, I can build it up. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Let's grab maybe the color like that. And just kind of like slowly build it up. Like there. Is that? Yeah. Okay. I think that kind of did it enough for me. We could also do something about this kind of darkness under the eyes. This darkness under the eyes does not bother me, to be honest. I think it looks okay, but I will just, maybe just slightly. So we'll grab from color from underneath, and with a bigger brush, just kind of go over like once or twice. Just really, just a little bit. And maybe do the same thing on this side. I don't have to worry about this freckle here because it's going to be, it's all kind of preserved on the high frequency layer. Okay, I think that looks good. I think that looks pretty good. We've still retained all the character in her face. I might come down here on the high frequency layer and and see, is there anything else that I want to maybe just get rid of? Maybe just this spot here, this one here. Yeah, the inpainting tool is really great for just these really quick, like, spot removals. Works really good. This kind of line, maybe it's a scratch on her face too, so, cat scratches. Okay. There's a bit of darkness here. Let me come down here, back to my paint color. I'll keep the high frequency layer on this time and just kind of see if I can paint that darkness out. Cool. And then we will use the high frequency layer to just get rid of that, and maybe like that. And cool. Nice. All right, I'm liking that. I think it looks good. It looks really natural. It looks just like her. If we do before and after, that's before and that is after. So, I mean, I think all the skin tone and the skin texture is still there. Everything looks really natural, and we've done our job. We haven't overdone it where it looks like she has some kind of like Instagram filter on or something. So I really like this look. So that ends part 1. Part 2 should be up in a few days, so be on the lookout for that. If you like it, please give a like, give a comment, tell me what you think, and I will see you soon. Thanks for watching.